In the serene town of Duxbury, Massachusetts, the chilling events of January 24, 2023 shook the community to its core. Lindsay Clancy, a 32-year-old labor and delivery nurse, became embroiled in a tragedy that would unravel the fabric of her seemingly idyllic family life. In a moment that would haunt not only her, but an entire community, Lindsay was accused of taking the lives of her three children: Cora, 5, Dawson, 3, and the youngest, Callan, just 8 months old. This case became a focal point for discussions about mental health, societal pressures on mothers, and the urgent need for systemic change in how we address postpartum mental health. Lindsay Clancy was often described as a devoted mother and loving wife to her husband, Patrick Clancy. They appeared to have the quintessential family: a beautiful home, successful careers, and a seemingly happy life filled with laughter and love. Lindsay worked as a labor and delivery nurse, a job that showcased her dedication to caring for others. Friends described her as vibrant, full of energy, and deeply committed to her family. However, as with many families, the realities behind closed doors can be starkly different from the image presented to the outside world. Lindsay had begun experiencing severe struggles with her mental health, particularly after the birth of her youngest child, Callan. Despite her professional background in healthcare, she found herself overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood, which gradually eroded her mental well-being. In the months leading up to the tragedy, Lindsay's mental health began to deteriorate. Friends and family noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She became more anxious and withdrawn, struggling to manage the daily challenges of parenting 3 young children. The pressure of balancing her demanding job and family life began to take a toll on her mental health, exacerbated by the hormonal changes associated with postpartum depression. Despite seeking treatment, including therapy and medication, Lindsay felt trapped in a cycle of despair. She often expressed feelings of inadequacy and fear, believing that she was failing as a mother. The stigma surrounding mental illness made it difficult for her to seek help openly, leading her to suffer in silence. Friends later recounted how they had reached out, but Lindsay's responses were often vague, masking the severity of her condition. On January 24, 2023, Patrick Clancy left the house for a brief errand, leaving Lindsay alone with the children. It was a seemingly ordinary evening, but it would become a night of unimaginable horror. In the hours that followed, something shifted dramatically in Lindsay's state of mind. When Patrick returned home, he was met with a scene that no parent should ever have to witness. In the aftermath of Lindsay's actions, Cora and Dawson were found unresponsive, while Callan was critically injured. Emergency services arrived quickly, but the outcome was devastating. Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead at the scene, and Callan later succumbed to his injuries at the hospital. News of the Clancy family tragedy spread rapidly, sending shockwaves through the Duxbury community. Friends, neighbors, and relatives were left grappling with the horror of what had transpired. How could a loving mother so devoted to her children become involved in such a tragedy? The community was left in disbelief as it struggled to reconcile the image of the Clancy family with the reality of the situation. Vigils were held to honor the memory of Cora and Dawson, with local residents gathering to mourn the loss of innocent lives. The emotional impact of the tragedy rippled through Duxbury, prompting conversations about mental health and the pressures faced by mothers. While some rallied around Lindsay, recognizing her struggles with mental illness, others expressed outrage and grief for the children lost too soon. Following the incident, Lindsay Clancy was taken into custody, facing multiple charges, including 2 counts of homicide. The legal proceedings that followed became a highly publicized trial, capturing the attention of national media and sparking intense discussions about mental health and accountability. The prosecution argued that Lindsay's actions, regardless of her mental state, resulted in the deaths of her children. They sought to frame her as a mother who, despite being aware of her struggles, made conscious choices that led to this devastating outcome. The prosecution's case was bolstered by testimonies from medical professionals who discussed the severity of the situation and the implications of her actions. In contrast, the defense team focused on Lindsay's deteriorating mental health. They argued that she was suffering from severe postpartum depression and psychosis, which clouded her judgment and distorted her perception of reality. They presented expert testimony from mental health professionals who explained how untreated postpartum conditions can lead to delusions and severe distress. Witnesses testified about Lindsay's loving nature and her deep commitment to her children. They argued that her actions were not premeditated, but rather the tragic result of a mother in crisis. The defense emphasized that Lindsay was not a danger to her children by choice, but rather a victim of her circumstances, highlighting the need for understanding and compassion. The media coverage surrounding the case was extensive, and public opinion became sharply divided. Social media platforms lit up with discussions, debates, and emotional reactions. Some expressed sympathy for Lindsay, calling for a deeper understanding of mental health and the pressures mothers face. Others, however, were unable to overlook the loss of innocent lives and demanded justice for Cora, Dawson, and Callan. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a battleground for contrasting narratives. Emotional testimonies from family members, friends, and medical professionals painted a complex picture of Lindsay's life. The media frenzy added to the stress of the trial, with headlines often sensationalizing the tragedy and the ensuing legal battle. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the Duxbury community began to rally for change. Conversations about mental health gained prominence, with residents advocating for better resources and support systems for mothers struggling with postpartum issues. Local organizations began initiatives aimed at raising awareness about maternal mental health, emphasizing the importance of compassion and understanding. Community members organized support groups for parents dealing with grief and mental health challenges, fostering an environment where individuals could share their experiences without fear of stigma. The tragedy sparked a movement that sought to address the gaps in mental health care, particularly for new mothers who may feel isolated and overwhelmed. As the trial unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the emotional toll on all involved was profound. Patrick Clancy, caught in the crossfire of grief and love for his wife, faced an unimaginable situation. He had lost his children and now found himself navigating the complexities of a legal system that sought to assign blame for a tragedy that had shattered his family. The courtroom drama revealed the stark realities of mental illness and the challenges faced by those who suffer from it. Testimonies from experts highlighted the importance of early intervention and support for mothers experiencing postpartum depression, a condition that often goes untreated due to societal stigma. As the trial drew to a close, the jury's verdict would ultimately reflect society's struggle to reconcile compassion for mental illness with accountability for tragic actions. The anticipation of the verdict weighed heavily on the community and the families involved. Regardless of the outcome, the case served as a potent reminder of the urgent need for systemic changes in how mental health is addressed in society. The tragedy of the Clancy family resonated far beyond the courtroom, sparking discussions that would continue long after the trial concluded. The case of Lindsay Clancy will likely be remembered as a pivotal moment in discussions surrounding mental health, particularly in relation to postpartum conditions. The tragedy ignited a movement advocating for better mental health support for mothers, emphasizing that maternal mental health is critical for the well-being of families. As the community continues to heal from the devastating loss, there is hope that lessons learned from this tragedy will lead to more robust support systems for new mothers. Initiatives aimed at raising awareness about postpartum depression and advocating for resources are gaining traction, reflecting a growing understanding of the importance of mental health care. The tragic case of Lindsay Clancy serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the complexities surrounding mental health and motherhood. It underscores the need for open conversations about maternal, mental health, compassion, and systemic change to ensure that no mother feels isolated or overwhelmed by the demands of parenting. As we reflect on the events of January 24, 2023, we are called to create a world where mental health is prioritized and mothers have access to the support they need to thrive. The legacy of the Clancy tragedy may ultimately lead to greater awareness, understanding, and resources for those facing the shadows of mental illness, paving the way for a brighter future for families struggling with similar challenges.